This video is intended to describe a lightblade wand named Celestial Tempest. Joining me today on this tour of crystalline complexities will be my whimsical stick figure chakra map for visual guide reference Q, as well as this auxiliary leather which will be installed on this when this is notarized, and these badgings of these archetypal symbols will be mentioned in turn as well. They'll be installed on top of the leather, so of course notarizing all the key points before I get into straight into dissertation. Now, what I'll do first is discuss the primary blade band scaffolding scene right here, running much like so, up the sides of this handband, which actually has its own scaffolding, looks very similar to this right here, running on both smoke quartz and hematite up the sides, up to this primary blade band ignition sequence, completing the circuit all the way up here, which vaguely resembles a figure 8 to be the scaffolding of the energy of this whole construct to run a perpetual closed loop circuit for maximum energetic recirculation of this entire complex construct. Okay, so without further ado, I'll discuss the blade bands first. So, starting off right here, running laterally like so is the transmutation blade band, as well as down here for the main engine of the device or heart of the construct. This band is transmutation once again, which runs up the sides up here and up here to this lateral band right here to be this transmutation subcircuit, which will have many merits, which I'll describe right now, based on the composition. So right here is hematite. Hematite is a fantastic iron-based mineral that has a very powerful grounding of all excess energy through the root chakra into the earth stars, into the earth bringing matrix for reprocessing. It also takes all excess stray radial energies and ensures that everything is grounded very firmly through the root into the earth, which is going to be very advantageous the further I describe its function. In tandem with smoky quartz next on the ignition order seen right here. Smoky quartz, just like hematite, is a fantastic grounder of negativity by firmly grounding the energy into Mother Earth for energetic dialysis, reprocessing. And in this variety, the slightly exotic nature of the transmutation sequence is pyrite. So pyrite is much more of a yang polarity of iron-based mineral right there, just like hematite, except pyrite's a very powerful directive solar plexus current, so it also makes very powerful insulation of energy through the field, as well as taking high-frequency energies and directing it into form through intention is also where pyrite shines, which will be very helpful for this very ambitious construct. To, of course, have a directional frequency of the broadcast be more precise and more focused in that capacity. So that is an exotic variety of the tried and true transmutation blade band ratio seen right here. And so describing this lateral band based on the hematite, smoke quartz, and the pyrite is exactly this sequence, which is the main containment of the main heart of the construct. Like I said, recirculating and concealed under this lovely blue and white leather would of course just be the smoky quartz and hematite running up the sides, both up here to the saddle band, then regrounding. So this whole subcircuit plays a rather critical role as a foundation to ensure the entire contact patch of this extremely high yield construct has a very firm grounding frequency to take all this excess intensive high frequency energy, ensure the contact patch is grounding through the root chakra, into the earth stars, into the earth for reprocessing, which plays a very critical role to indeed make the magic real, as well as being a way to ground this energy and bring it into a very comfortable range into tangibility. As a basically also a regulation feature too, to ensure the excessive contact patch always has a strong ground point. That's why it definitely is worth the extra painstaking repeating myself to describe the intrinsic important functionality of having a very strong grounded cycle, as well as, since of course the blade band scaffolding is a way to basically contain and reprocess the excess energy of this whole construct in a very smooth fashion, running this perpetual closed loop reactive circular circuit. So that also works as the foundation of the scaffolding that will be very useful for this very lengthy tour ahead of anyone watching this and myself. That will be described in great turn and notoriety of, very complex, high-yield exotic construct. So I believe 4.5 minutes would suffice to describe the transmutation function of those blade band scaffolding. Now I'll be moving on to the primary blade band, which is definitely where the name Celestial Tempest is derived from. So obviously the archetypal name is derived by the crystalline ignition order to give it appropriate frequency broadcast that's in alignment with the name designated for the construct. So starting off with this primary blade band would be clear quartz, try to get my camera right. Running all the way up here, that's of course grounded into this lateral band to be part of the lightblade scaffolding. Clear quartz going into right here, being Libyan gold tektite. Libyan gold tektite is a very powerful gold ray tektite, which means it comes from basically space. Yet it's a whole long story about scientific jury being out about its origin, but anyhow, that did not stop the Egyptian pharaohs from utilizing this particular frequency for their power breastplates, which were the office of the badge of office of the Magi God King of the Egyptian dynasties of magic. So that is a pretty cool fact about its Egyptian utilization. And then the aspect of it being what I fondly refer to as goldovite, kind of like its cousin right here, moldavite. It's a very powerful, intensive frequency of the golden spectrum, which has a very distinct, intense solar plexus and sacrum stimulation, as well as a full golden ray of illumination through the entire energy body as a whole, which makes it very dynamic and very intense. And so, in my humble opinion, I do consider it to be the most powerful golden ray crystalline stimulant in the mineral kingdom that is very powerful gold ray of illumination through the entire auric field, which puts one in touch with the source emanation. And to further support that concept also, which I will tell in turn based on ignition order, but that'll make sense in a few moments. This right here is rutilated quartz. Rutilated quartz is actually clear quartz with bands of rutile through it, which work as a massive accelerant or supercharger of the frequency. So you could think of the ignition sequence seen right here with both the lovely Libyan gold, then rutile would super intensify into petersite. Petersite, also known as the tempest stone, is quite the dynamic powerhouse of a very intense yield. So oftentimes, as a disclaimer, I utilize this frequency very sparing in the construct based on its intensive high-frequency yield nature, but indeed, this is definitely a race car variant of Lightblade wand, so it is really high performance and not made for comfort, just like a race car in that capacity. Hence, petersite, the tempest stones here. Petersite is much like a very much, as a fun analogy I utilize, tiger-sized cousin that's on ridiculous amounts of steroids, or even super steroids. That is a very powerful, full-frequency light body stimulant as well, and it has a great concentration of the third eye and solar plexus, yet it actually activates the entire chakra column and with near hurricane force, actually. That's also why its other name, tempest stone, is quite fitting in my humble opinion, because I do concur with whoever came up with that concept. Because petersite is a very, very dynamic, powerful accelerant of one's dharma into manifestation, just like this. I actually omitted this for Libyan gold tektite, but Libyan gold tektite's capacity is very powerful for manifestation, obviously being a very powerful solar plexus stimulant, and also a very dramatic dharmic accelerant in connection to who they are in creation, manifesting in 3D. Pretty dramatic statement, but that's indeed why this is one of my favorite stones, Libyan gold that is. But back to petersite. So petersite churns all the aspects of the energy field to a very high octave, and it works very quickly for full lightning frequency almost. It's very, very stormy in that capacity, so it's definitely considered to be a cardinal storm energy, and it's very, very enlivening and very, very intensively surge activating to the chakra column. And hence now, of course, discussing that concept, the contingency of the transmutation scaffolding to bring grounding to the whole construct definitely brings a more relevant highlight now. To ground this energy as quick as possible, the big idea too of the transmutation ratio is to, of course, mitigate the timeline whiplash with such a high frequency conducting device to ensure that the entire energy of this whole process is being firmly grounded to the earth for energetic dialysis, reprocessing, or transmutation of negativity into positivity to ensure the energy being stirred up with such a high frequency construct is growing into Mother Earth at a very rapid rate. That's why the transmutation ratio is mentioned thrice in its importance of this high yield construct, because the more horsepower, the bigger the tires you'll require, just like race cars. So there you go, more contact patch. Okay. Anyway, that's enough of that digression. I still talk about petersite. So petersite's dynamic range is very powerful for aspects of precognition, as well as dramatic intensification of manifestation, as well as fearlessness and instant insight. It's very powerful for cutting through the fog of confusion that would basically inhibit one's conscious self psychic perception to higher guidance. So it makes a very powerful clear focus that really just burns through the electromagnetic interference fog, or even the ego mind identity, EMI, to be a very powerful higher perception of instant akashic records, or just knowing things without having the mind to have to work it out with the jury, because you're so in touch with the quantum field of just the Akashic record, essentially, of quantum perception of information. It's very crazy stuff, actually. But obviously, it's like I mentioned, it's rather volatile for its activation so swift, like a hurricane force, that I utilize it quite sparingly, unless it's for a very special project such as this. Okay, so I think it's enough dissertation on Peter's type. Then to transition into the blade band ignition sequence would also be golden healer quartz. Golden healer quartz is a fantastic high heart stimulate gold white light source energy attunement, which metaphysically purpose-wise is irreplaceable, in my humble opinion. Hence, it's one of the subcapacitation agents in the ignition order of this very exotic blade. Starting off with, once again, Libyan gold tektite, rutilated quartz, petersite, golden healer quartz, be that source direct frequency emanation, then Libyan gold tektite, then rutilated quartz, then petersite, then golden healer quartz, and so on until it runs into its clear quartz down here to ground back into the transmutation ratio. So that'd be a very sufficient overview of the entire lightblade scaffolding before I discuss the highly exotic composition before me. So that's of course like a very powerful, this combination sequence is designed to be very intensively powerful for the solar plexus stimulation with the Libyan gold tektite, as well as full gold white light illumination frequency of the aura. And the petersite's very dynamic for a spiritual aspirant's massive acceleration of Dharma. This is definitely developed for someone who's very serious about their Dharma path and doesn't care what it takes to put in the desire, the devotion, and the discipline to see her Dharma through, basically. That's what it comes down to. And so that's why this is a really intense, high-frequency race car. Hence, I've also employed my grounding staff to be on the table to keep me coherent and consolidated as I'm doing my best to notarize such a dynamic, exotic, high-yield construct. That's why this guy is indeed here, to keep it linear and coherent as possible. Okay, so that's a blade band. After that digression, that recirculates entire energy. So I'll go ahead and discuss the main heart of the construct, which will take quite a while because it is jam-packed full of many components, or basically crystalline organs of this self-aware entity before me that is indeed based on the concepts of consciousness-assisted technology, if you would, which will make more sense as I describe that concept too. Because obviously in these videos I must police myself to make coherent sense without getting too far down the rabbit hole, so it actually almost can be intelligible. At least that's my New Year's resolution, and I try to stick to that. So before I discuss the intensive components of this whole section, I'll go ahead and get these out of the way. So after this whole section is filmed and notarized, this white leather hood will be installed for many dynamic purposes, actually, more than just aesthetics. Aesthetics are usually never my priority ever in these constructs, even though I guess repetition is made them a little more aesthetically pleasing, but I'm trying to get this over here to kind of get back on target. Okay, so this will do for the dissertation's sake. So once this is, of course, filmed, this white leather will be installed between this lateral band as well as this lateral band right here to be actually a very functional component, like a hood for a car, if you would, is the best simplistic analogy I can utilize. So the white leather also plays a full white spectrum color therapy stimulation, so it has a color therapy agent, as well as it's very essential for actually insulating the energy between these 2 points to condense the energy, so that if this entire hood section that's very, very intense and complex actually has more containment to basically keep the contained energy insulated through this blade band while it's being wielded in focus, so this excess energy is not just radiating out like nobody's business like crazy. So of course it makes it run more efficiently when you're invoking frequency, or basically running vibrational revs through the structure, if you would. So the insulation is very important for efficiency's sake. Oh, drop the white leather. That's B, or number 2 of the priority of describing the hood that will be installed once this is taken care of. And also C, it also works as a great way to, of course, protect all these subtle stones, which is quite a dynamic subroutine down here that is very, very complexive. So while, of course, this is being wielded by the commissioner or the practitioner who is going to receive this device, and it's going to, of course, ensure that all these other crystalline components, or the organs of this construct, do not run away while on the job, particularly with the practitioner being a very serious about her Dharma and her career and her path. of being a practitioner should be wielding this quite intensely and quite a bit. So that also works as a way to protect the soul stones. And D, last but not least, it also does give a nice aesthetic finish by having this properly laced right here to, ideal configuration once it's of course installed. And that'll make a very nice little capstone to the construct in a finished device. So also, another thing before I move on, is that these will be auxiliary power packs, which will actually be installed above the leather. So as a joke that I've employed as well as some of my colleagues, we call them hood scoops. Kind of like on a race car, we have a hood scoop above the hood. It's kind of funny. But anyhow, so this right here is actually a lovely love currency that was commissioned into existence by the lovely Wizard of Sedona, Mr. Stephen Ross. And so I've had the privilege of augmenting this particular coin many times now, and with different frequencies. So that's a fun fact, where the message that is from his heart center conviction that made him, of course, take action to have it cast in a stone is this timeless message of with love, in love, and through love for all actions, of course, in that aspect. And how do you maintain that? Oh, yeah, a beautiful heart, an open mind, and a humble spirit. Oh, I'm sorry the focus is off, but yeah. Anyhow, that's the big idea. So that's the archetypal message that's been now amplified with its own sub-circuit. So the sub-circuit for this guy is quite the dynamic range frequency generator as well, being what I would consider the miracle ratio by being a tremendous full spectrum engagement that would start off with ruby, carnelian, tiger's eye, peridot, emerald, aquamarine, turquoise, blue lapis, as well as blue sapphire, then amethyst, then clear quartz, then hematite, completing the circuit. So the big idea of this, of course, by having the dynamic exotic range of this entire full light by cylinder with ruby, carnelian, tiger's eye, peridot, third and fourth, then emerald, of course, then aquamarine, fourth and fifth, then fifth with turquoise, then fifth and sixth with both the sapphire and the lapis, then the amethyst. That's the idea, of course, is having the fully unified stimulated chakra calm to the ideal configuration is what I consider the miracle ratio, to have that entire spectrum ignited simultaneously. Then completing this particular circuit would be the employment of hematite to further take the excess of the seven rays right here and ensure the strong iron grounding of this circuit is, of course, encouraging the energy to ground into reality, which would be another small contingency to this ridiculously high frequency construct before me. Okay. So that'd be the love currency, well notarized. On the other side of the hood, once that, of course, is installed, this is a very special combination of both a phoenix as well as a dragon. So the phoenix, obviously, is the quintessential spirit animal of the alchemical endeavor. So obviously having the phoenix being well represented here is very special to have the connotations of rising from the ashes of the old life to become who one really is in a glorious firebird nature. Quite a beautiful homage. I love that creature quite a bit. And so then the dragon, the quintessential creature of magic, in my opinion, also makes for a lovely pairing for the phoenix and the dragon simultaneously, which also is very near and dear to the recipient's heart, which I will omit and just keep on cruising. And so right here, this definitely was intended to look more like an overt figure eight for a good purpose. We're actually even redirected the wire to fold over to have the apex of the 8 right here to be indeed a very special ignition ratio that will go on top of the leather. So starting off with clear quartz right here to be a neutral ambient accelerant of the energy, then going into cinnabar. Cinnabar is a very powerful, amazingly intense magical stone of alchemical transmutation as well. That has a very intense stimulation to the root, thank goodness, to purify and ground like the ground point of the earth. The sacrum, as well as the entire energy body, that also a tremendous third eye stimulant. It also puts one in touch with the currents of creation, which is truly could be denoted to be a sorcery archetype frequency. Very, very powerful meta stuff right there. And so I'll go ahead and just keep on cruising because I have much more to cover. Then clear quartz to neutrally accelerate into the lovely rose quartz. So with all this high frequency energy and transmutation of alchemical acceleration, the big idea too is to keep the love frequency in a prominent section of the rose quartz to, of course, with the high heart of pink ray love, or divine love, if you would. So that, of course, will ignite into the clear quartz and the cinnabar, and so on through the whole figure eight of both the phoenix and the dragon. Okay. Now, before I continue the individual components being notarized, I'll go ahead and also conclude the blade band scaffolding, which I saved for right now, of the abundance ratio seen here, as well as here, identical as possible. So by the time this video occurred in late March, since early January, there have been 20 different abundance platforms now operational and in distribution, which is quite the prolific concentrated push in my life's work. And so having this little lateral band of exactly the same frequency ignition sequence utilized in the abundance platforms is another nod and homage of compatibility with the abundance initiative. And so what, of course, has been called the abundance ratio that's been quite prolific in this time period has a combination of golden healer quartz, seen right here to be that gold white light source energy emanation, going into emerald to be that quintessential green ray heart chakra stimulation, then going into peridot being a lovely also third and fourth chakra stimulant of growth, basically the frequency of chlorophyll, how all of this happens, of course, in crystalline format. Then clear quartz being neutral accelerant. So the big idea of the abundance ratio on both the brass and the silver right here for the intake and output of the same frequency to maximize the intake of that abundance ratio and output so it's circular is to have a very powerful exaggeration expansion frequency of the idyllic heart chakra receptivity, particularly in conjunction with source energy and as a subcapacitation. So it's performed pretty darn well. I'll just leave it at that since its big debut and this significant new generation in early January. And yes, so that'd be the abundance ratio as the last lateral band. And so once, of course, that's done, these guys will have extra wires grounded into that structure right there to ground between here and here to be just a part of the subcircuit as energy runs its current, essentially. So like I mentioned, the exact frequency of abundance right here is also found right here as close as possible, obviously. The exact same ignition sequence on both the brass and the silver for the intake and output of the same frequency. That's running through its a lateral band that subdiffuses, then has that very strong abundance frequency emanation. Okay, so that would be all the blade band scaffolding besides the thumb engagement and the trigger, which of course will get their own notarization. Okay, without further ado, I will tackle the main heart of this entire construct right here. So, at the behest of the recipient, who is also a skull priestess, she actually had this little guy sign up for this amazing job. So basically, kind of a little joke we've had is that this guy is almost like the head and heart of the construct, and we built the crystalline body around him. And so that indeed is a very cool rutilated quartz crystal skull. That's quite spectacular. That also serves as the main heart, even the head of this entire engine, as well as its counterpart of clear quartz as well, being a dragon. So the big idea too, why quartz is such an important neutral ambient frequency. So the impulse of magic from the recipient's higher self, like ideally, of being a Jedi, essentially, to kind of throw jokes in there for familiarity's sake. Also works to have the impulses of magic that is wielded through the system actually run the current as wielded in the hand, for example, run the current into here to, of course, hold the frequency of the impulses of intention to a very high degree. That, of course, will run through the entire circuitry of the subroutine. So obviously the intentions of the wielder are very much well captured by the frequency resonance of clear quartz seen here and here, which indeed puts in the realm of being consciousness-assisted technology. So there we have it. So of course, like I mentioned, this amazing guy right here who is the star of the show, is the main also heart and head of the construct, as well as its dragon counterpart being a lovely also neutral quartz ambient frequency. These guys are both basically the main hearts of the construct in tandem, with many different organs throughout the entire crystalline entity before us. Okay, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and keep on cruising. And right here is a very lovely specimen of Robin's Egg Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, a very nice private stock specimen I received recently as part of a really beneficent bestowal. And so that's an authentic, lovely piece of the sought after and praised turquoise that is rather hard to come by these days based on its extreme vivid copper oxidized blue it has right here, which is the very apex of the entire construct between the two guys right here. Then beneath that is nickel iron meteorite. Nickel iron meteorite is a fantastic cool space metal, I'm sorry, not a rock, but it's metal, nickel iron from space that impacted this reality. That is also the father slash mother stone of black tektite, since I'm on the same subject. Black tektite is the product of nickel iron meteorite impacting the sand, carrying that extraterrestrial cosmic jolt through the entire system. That is a very powerful full light body activator as well, and a tremendous black ray, thank goodness, ground up frequency broadcast intensifier of the whole system. So that's why I brought that up, because it's very much relevant to these two in tandem. And right here, this big piece is actually quite the large piece of the main engine, which is actually quite substantial and very, very critical and important in its concept. So this gets very, very rabbit hole, tinfoil hat metaphysical territory. So I always do my best to polish this up and make it coherent and consolidated, but it's very difficult to do because it gets very far out discussing the properties of celestial smoky quartz. So celestial quartz is a variety of smoky quartz, which has a natural grounding of energy into the earth, which is a nice transportation agent. But the celestial format that's quite exotic actually has a very special role in resonating in tandem with one's higher self blueprint in a very perpetually idyllic state. So this frequency really always works to meet the recipient where they're at and also work at that level to ensure the perfect equilibrium regulation is running through the entire frequency based on higher self blueprint guidance, essentially, or factory settings, if you would. And where it really shines in any given lightblade construct is particularly for a very high yield construct, is it serves as a tremendous dimmer switch, auto regulator, surge protector of the excess yield of the frequency. So this plays a very absolute pivotal role in this extremely high yield construct to ensure the contact patch of the frequency is met in the equilibrium idyllic range, no matter how much spiritual G's is running through this thing and how much like the frequency is running through for such a dynamic, aggressive platform. And that plays a very important role as a contingency, and also to ensure the frequency patch is also regulating for whoever wields it. Even besides the primary wielder, this also works to cater and resonate to whoever engages it besides the primary commissionee. So this actually works as a powerful auto-regulation. So whoever needs what they need at that moment is designed to calibrate the entire frequency pitch of the entire blade before us to the optimum range of resonance and comfortability. It's very ridiculously dynamic, and I think I did enough without going too far down the rabbit hole discussing that. Okay. So next I'll discuss these two in tandem because they actually are quite the fantastic team. This is Star Argonite. Star Argonite is a fantastic calcium-based full light bistimulant that works very quickly to clear stagnant energies from top to bottom of the auric field, which is what I consider a true master healer frequency. So any impediments get rapidly basically cleared from a full luminous light body, which is very spectacular. And also, not to mention, of course, anything that's mentioned so far has been wire wrapped into a primary wire that makes it a closed loop reactive circuit that all ping off each other for vibrational compound interest of this entire closed loop broadcast. So naturally, these frequencies all will be in tandem together and harmonized, just as a disclaimer that I've yet to mention about a half hour of rambling. And so right here, this would be Seraphinite. Seraphinite, just like Star Argonite, is a very fantastic full light bistimulant based on the Seraphim Archangels as a name, and works as a very powerful full light bistimulant that works very, very, very powerfully to dismantle any energetic patterns that manifest as dis-ease. So it's a quintessential master healer employed for many years for a distinct purpose and is an incredible, amazing green ray ally that is of the essence. So those two together, of course, both have the same kind of energy stimulation and work fantastic together to be true master healers in tandem with Tibetan black quartz, which eventually I'll get to at the tip of the blade. But those three together I employ quite religiously for true dynamic master healers that work together to dismantle any etheric patterns that manifest as a dis-ease, essentially. Yep. That's also the Ark of the Covenant. It's my paperweight. It's not there for looks. It's actually there for a function to keep my whimsical stick figure map flattened out for dissertations. Okay. Anyway, enough digressions. So right here behind the Seraphinite is also a lovely piece of malachite, a very well utilized magical stone of fire energy, but it's green. Pretty cool. And it's copper based. It also makes it for a fantastic, intense stimulation of the third and fourth chakras. It also works to melt restrictive patterns of one's capacity to manifest in creation, which is a very cool gift of malachite. and a very, very powerful etheric shield generator that way also, because it protects the solar plexus and the heart in its own dynamic range. And so it also really definitely intensifies the conviction and fortification of one's will reserves to accomplish the Dharma. So that's a nice little dose of that. Then right here is something called Gabbro or Mystic Merlinite. Quite the special magical stone of full white and black polarity, basically kind of a combination of positive and negative of both polarities in one frequency, which is also a very powerful full light body stimulant as well as a boon to magic. I'm just going to keep on cruising. Make it simple at this point, keep on going. Then right here is Chaurite. Chaurite is a very incredible purple ray dharmic stimulant that is very obviously crown chakra stimulating, yet it has a black dendritic, which also makes for a very powerful grounding of energy through the earth stars. So it has that wind frequency that grounds through very impeccably, which is also a tremendous violet ray dharmic accelerant to manifest one's reality and who they really are by burning any kind of stagnant divistatory imprintations from the system ground through the earth. Very amazing dharmic stimulant right there. Okay. Then right here is Heliodor. Heliodor actually is of the beryl family, which means it's a golden ray cousin to emerald. Heliodor, gift of the sun is what that means, is a very, very powerful solar plexus stimulant of one's intention as well as crystalline Christ frequency alignment emanation. So that's a very powerful dose of manifestation agent. Then to bring a little more soothing to this celestial tempest is a nice piece of Larimar, which will be of course found up here as well for a distinct contingency purpose. Larimar is a very fantastic, soothing, beautiful stone of the 5th and 6th chakras, that of water and fire polarities, interestingly enough. So it brings a nice equilibrium, calm, soothing frequency to the entire auric field pitch, as well as nice for obviously stimulating the 5th chakra to ideal configuration and voice projection. Okay, that is this side of the blade face just about, besides labradorite. Actually, this is spectralite, another trade name for a special kind of labradorite that is quite magical. So even a small dose is a very powerful boon to the psychic gift capacities of cities and using it for shamanic work or magic essentially. Then right here is fulgurite. Fulgurite is literally petrified lightning carrying the energy of lightning striking sand, which is actually a very powerful full light body stimulant because it literally carries the energy of lightning. So it was utilized by First Nation shamans to intensify their prayers back to spirit. And so it's a very classic spiritual utilized by the magic people of that time period, of the First Nation medicine people. And so that has a very powerful, really intensive manifestation agent acceleration as well. And I think that's just this side just basically described, which, okay, I'm flipping it on over. Okay, so this next section I'll describe in just one shot based on their critical function all together. That would be the jasper as well as the agates seen right here, which I'll describe right now starting from the ground up, literally. This is red jasper. Red jasper is a fantastic root chakra red ray stabilizer of earth frequency, unsurpassed mineral kingdom. So as a little disclaimer too, is that jaspers and agates are the most stable emanations of whatever elemental spectrum color range they emanate at, which plays a critical role, which I'll get to in a moment. But red jasper is a classic stabilizer of the root and tremendously underrated because having a stabilized root chakra in like reality, particularly in spiritual aspirations, I consider to be of the absolute essence, obviously, to keep it grounded and most importantly, make it real and bring comfort to the physical avatar. And so red jasper answers that call very well. Then moving on to fire agate. Fire agate is the quintessential stabilized fire stimulant of the root, the sacrum, and the solar plexus, and fire energy, obviously. Then going into the water spectrum, which is both moss green agate as well as blue lace agate. Moss green agate is the quintessential green ray stabilizer of the heart chakra. Then the aspect of blue lace agate being a stabilized 5th chakra water elemental spectrum, which of course is very advantageous to have a stabilized 5th. It's how people talk. It comes in handy sometimes. Then right here is a very special stone called holly blue agate, even though it indeed is a violet agate. So Holly Blue is a very lovely stabilizer of the 6th and 7th chakras. So by having this particular sequence of earth, fire, water, and wind is indeed the 4 terrestrial elements found on the medicine wheel, represented here in the most stabilized format possible for equilibrium and longevity, which obviously is the purpose of a balanced progressive life, so to speak, particularly an aspect of being one with the force, essentially. So having the aspect of earth, fire, water, and wind, the most stabilized frequencies that I can get my hands on, also make for another smoothing out of this entire excessive high vibratory pitch to ensure the balance and equilibrium as much as possible for how dynamic and intense this construct is, to be perfectly frank. So here's a fulgurite right here, another petrified lightning like mentioned over here to further intensify that lightning frequency. Then, that is the Heliodor I mentioned. So right here, this is black tektite again, just like the other side. I have another dose of that. Then, right here is a very special variety of... Trying to get my camera to behave. It's not focusing correctly today. That right there, that is spirit aura quartz, but it actually is red spirit aura quartz, which is very exceedingly rare, actually. And the red in there, of course, is an iron-based hematoid spirit aura quartz. So spirit aura quartz oftentimes come in amethyst or citrine appearance, which has many different quartz spectrums, but this one actually is red hematoid, which is very grounding, which is very advantageous for the particular frequency pitch of spirit quartz's metaphysical properties. So the aspect also of spirit quartz is a very dynamic, full merger with the higher self frequency that's very, very powerful for like aligning the entire auric field to the highest configuration as well. Yet the red also brings a strong iron-based grounding of that reality, which is very dynamic and very cool for the prerogative of this construct. And so I'm putting out there my intention to manifest more of this stuff in my life, because that's very neat that this is here. Once again, spirit aura quartz, that is of the amethyst. Sorry, I misspoke. I mean the hematoid, iron-based nature. Because I'm so used to describing them as amethyst, that's why this is quite the conundrum. And that's why I'm digressing and nerding out to myself while I'm trying to have a serious dissertation. Anyhow, so right here, this would also be red tiger's eye. Tiger's eye is a fantastic stabilizer and also straightener of the lower 3 chakras of solar plexus, sacrum, and base. But the red obviously has a strong connotation to stabilizing the root, which would be very useful for this construct. Absolutely. Then, right here, little 5th attack after all this talking. Right there, that is ruby and zoisite. Ruby, obviously being the quintessential red ray root chakra stimulant mineral kingdom of royal antiquity, combined with zoisite makes a fantastic green ray heart-mind coherence engagement. So when you have the trifecta of the heart-mind coherence with the Gusto for life, it makes a very nice dynamic frequency to have one's truth and who they are in touch with their heart and mind. Manifest right here, small dose. Then right here is a lovely piece of amber. Amber, though not technically a mineral, is also a great metaphysical ally of transmutation through a sunny filter, which is great for taking negativity and positivity and turning it into useful, clear energy. Fun fact. Then right here, another fulgurite. Then infinitite, as well as actually the trigger up here has a large piece of infinitite as well for a critical role. Infinitite is the quintessential serpentine, in my opinion. It's a variety of serpentine that's very powerful for full Kundalini activation, as well as decrystallizing any habitual patterns that cause a stagnant reaction, aka a physical imbalance manifesting, if you would. So that's why there's 2 of them on here to be a strong dose for very high yield, basically kind of flash cooking healing patterns to dismantle any aspects of deficiencies from the entire auric field. So that's the fun aspect about that guy, which will be briefly notarized once it gets to the trigger. And I'm going to check the engine one more time for a survey. Oh, so actually it's very well concealed at this point, but underneath this blue lace agate right here is a very prominent, large, lovely sphere of lapis lazuli all the way down here, directly terminated the back of this guy's head, which plays a very critical role, which will actually, I'll say that for this trigger right here, because this is all lapis in engagement. So lapis lazuli is indeed there. Make sure you didn't forget anything else, because it got quite complex in this composition, actually. I'm sure there actually might be cool things that are concealed that need to be notarized. Oh, yes, there actually is a very critical thing. Oh my goodness. Underneath this malachite and underneath this fulgurite right here, seen right there, is prophecy stone. Prophecy stone is actually quite the fantastic novelty in the mineral kingdom, and is considered to be the mother-father rock of Libyan gold tektite. But the scientific jury is still apparently out on that assessment. But prophecy stone is a metal-based, I'm going to guess it's a meteorite of some kind, obviously, that was found by a rockhound more recently who had a massive, unexpected prophetic vision. So it's an iron-based mineral that actually has certain metals that are not found on our periodic table. So that's obviously space metal that is not terrestrial to our Earth. So that also has a very intense grounding of energy through the root chakra, but also has a very expansive, intense 6th, 7th, higher psychic perception blast open simultaneously, which is pretty cool. So even a small dose of that like space metal of mysterious origin goes a long way to awaken one's higher clairvoyant and clairaudient, clairsentient, you name all the clairs faculties as well as another boon. So that indeed, now I know for sure that's allowed. That's what I was forgetting. That's what I was wanting to talk about, and now I have satisfied that itch of proper, thorough dissertation. Because obviously 40 minutes in, if I haven't got to the main blade face yet, I'm pretty serious and thorough about notarizing this construct as much as possible. Okay, my digressions. Okay, so this will be the blade face component seen right here, and these will be the focalizers of the energy right here, as well as the trigger and the thumb engagement left to discuss. So I'll go ahead and discuss the thumb engagement while I actually employ this book right here to help me sit her up straight. Okay. So this right here, the foundation of this entire thumb engagement, which actually, of course, is obviously developed to engage the thumb like so, as well as this down here, this auxiliary power pack is designed to gauge the index finger, much like a thumb engagement and the trigger, if you would, which is the whole purpose of that whole construct, to engage like so. The foundation of this entire thumb engagement section actually is that of a lovely rutilated quartz cabochon. Rutilated quartz, like mentioned on the blade band, is the tremendous accelerant of whatever frequency is around a particularly strapped in termination sequence. As a tremendous turbocharger or supercharger to other frequencies, hence the foundation of this entire platform is very vibrant and very intense and very loud. And the gold in there actually are strands of rutile, which is a titanium oxide caught in quartz, essentially, to give it a very vibrant titanium intense energy, which will be described on this focalizer as well, but gotta mitigate my digressions and actually have a sip of something, a beverage, so I can parch my throat. Okay, after the whistle has been wetted, I'll be continuing. Rutilated quartz will be the foundation of this whole construct, which actually has a lovely large piece of moldavite seen right here, which is one of the triggers as well, but describing one will be just sufficient. Moldavite is the quintessential, very famous these days, dharmic accelerant of green ray heart chakra stimulation that is quite dynamic in range for aligning ones to their divine blueprint or highest miracle path, which in a very, by itself, rather violent fashion, which is why it has notoriety of being on TikTok for ruining people's lives, because indeed this catalyst of spiritual transformation does indeed ruin the false self matrix of who one's thoughts and who they are, not what they are basically, of course, get obliterated internally, externally to one's highest dharmic path in a very dynamic range, which is pretty cool for those who are serious about their spiritual evolution. I would say this, it's the quintessential dharmic accelerant to intensify one's reality internally, externally to one's highest dharmic appointed path of their highest path. Okay. And next to that would be Imperial Golden Topaz, which is another lovely gold ray stone of both gold and pink ray emanation. So it has a nice solar plexus simulation to intensify one's broadcast intentions, as well as the pink ray of the gold white light source Christ frequency also makes it compatible. So it's a lovely another source frequency dose right there. Then right here is a Herkimer diamond, which is a very special variety, of course, from Herkimer, New York. That's also another very powerful accelerant, and is pretty much the highest vibration of the clear quartz spectrum. That's very intense and vivid spiritual realm connection. But why that guy is also employed here is to indeed be a further intensification of authentic white diamond in the raw. So diamond is the 10 out of 10 hardness, quintessential stone of royalty that is the most vibrant, intense, precious stone, truly precious stone, known in creation, essentially, and valued by humanity. That is, of course, metaphysically applied to bring a great 10 out of 10 hardness, carbon-based invincibility, white ray frequency, which would be just another component and facet of the complexity of this device. And to further bring the royal opulence spectrum to the highest level is the employment of both ruby and sapphire, seen right here, starting off with the sapphire to be the absolute quintessential royal red ray root chakra stimulant, then clear quartz to be a neutral accelerant of the energy of the circuit, going into blue sapphire, the perfect cousin antithesis to red ruby, which is a nice wind elemental 5th and 6th chakra stimulant of royal virtues. So the two together are very opulent and very dynamic and very well balanced for the hydrogen oxygen induction of intake and output simultaneously for perpetual regeneration. So that would be the thumb engagement described in detail, which is very royal and very opulent. Now right here is the trigger, which of course the index finger is designed to engage down here, which is its own complex subroutine. So right here, the foundation of this device would be infinitite. Infinitite, like mentioned, is a very powerful, lovely version of serpentine that's very nice for healing any impediments in the energy body field and restitching and depatterning stagnant energies. But to further really get the most out of that is Faden quartz, seen right here. Faden quartz is a very special variety of quartz that actually is a product of breaking and restitching through its entire life cycle, which means the crystalline structure here has many breaks and restitches, which means it is basically the equivalent of vibrational fix-a-flat for any breaks in continuity of the grid work of the meridian's auric field to restitch and bridge those points of weakness to the optimum configuration from both the Earth stars and the soul stars simultaneously. So it is one of those true dynamic master healers based on it being a neutral quartz program that of course can be amplified by other frequencies around it to really dramatically intensify any stitch points required of any breaks in continuity of the field to basically run kind of vibrational bandages while the energy deficiency is being addressed by the rest of the construct, particularly with the focus of the intent. And it works fantastic with the infinitite. And then right here, obviously, need another piece of moldavite on the trigger to dramatically intensify that cosmic yield point. Then a larger piece of Libyan gold tektite in the raw, much like the beads seen right here, to be another intense golden ray manifestation intention frequency of opulence as well, because it is very opulent royal stone of ancient Egyptian dynasties. So there we have it. And then surrounding and recircling that entire trigger would be a blade band of clear quartz to be the neutral accelerant into the lovely legendary lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli is a great stone of royal virtue as well, of being a blue ray 5th and 6th chakra stimulant that is a very effective wind elemental stimulant that has been utilized by literally all parts of the world for thousands of years, particularly Egyptian mystery schools, for being a stone of Isis. So it's a classic stone of truth that is very popular, very famous, which means a lot of faith and magic has gone into this over millennia, quite literally. And so lapis is a lovely awakener of one sovereign truth into creation, particularly when it comes to clairvoyance and actually auric perception, things of that nature, for grid work purposes. Hence the trigger point there is designed to enhance and intensify the recipient's focus of energy to see the deficiencies to, in theory, work to solder them at the third level to manifest as physical continuity idyllic pattern. Okay, anyhow, that's the thumb and the trigger for everybody. I'm going to go ahead and put this book back. Okay. So now moving on, I'll go ahead and discuss the blade facing scene right here. So this is Himalayan golden azeztolite, which comes from the Himalayas, a place in the world that's virtually unrivaled in spiritual concentrated discipline of meditation, with many Om aspects, obviously. Seen also, of course, on both sides of the blade face, they are as identical as possible for full symmetry to have the complete ideal continuity of vibrational output on both sides as close as possible. Just a little disclaimer. So the Himalayan Golden Zest Light is a very powerful gold-white light source frequency alignment broadcast, which is very much the purpose of sorcery, if you would, is to be in touch with the source energy. So that is a big answer to that dose right there, which is very complementary to the Libyan Gold focus. So Himalayan Golden Zest Plate has a very fantastic full light white stimulation of gold infused in the body with gold white light source energy, which is really neat, of course. But the concentration also has a very powerful third and fourth chakra stimulation of source energy in alignment with one's will, which is basically what I consider to be successful sorcery output. And anyhow, that's that. This is Agni Manatite. Agni Manatite is a very special product of a volcanic explosion. So you can think of that being like a really rare, crazy variety of obsidian that is literally Mother Earth erupting, which is very powerful stuff right there. And so it has a very powerful acceleration eruption energy through the entire energy body as well, of literally carrying the energy of an eruption in tandem with lightning. That's quite the forces of nature at play, basically, obviously. So what's one of those things like lightning, like what's more powerful than the power of a volcanic eruption? That is now on this operating system. So it's a very powerful dynamic accelerant as well to spark the endeavors of the entire auric field, because like I said, it's literally the power of a volcanic eruption. And it's quite the rare specialized version of obsidian essentially, but that's why of course it even looks very much like a tektite, because of its very explosive manufacturing process, of course how it grows into existence. So above that explosive dynamic powerhouse would be aquatine Lemurian calcite. It's just like a calcite. It has a fantastic clearing of sting energy of the blue ray of the 5th and 6th chakras, yet it has a very strong Lemurian harmonization imprintation. So it's quite dynamically soothing and definitely has a good clarity perception range of the technology of the old world, if you would, much like Lemuria or Atlantis and Mu, to have a very lovely clear lens to I guess burn through the fog on red tape that would be blocking one's natural psychic perception of these other timelines of that particular Lemuria golden age, essentially. Very nice guy. Scolecite, the quintessential stone of divinity I employ quite religiously as well, is a fantastic 6th and 7th, 8th non-physical chakra, all the way to the Godhead stimulation point, which is also brings a great white light, divine soothing energy through the aura, which is a great stone of divinity. Then Purpite. Purpite is actually very cool. It's wind and earth frequency combination, which combines both the aspects of the higher soul star and the earth star simultaneously, just like Chaurite, to be a tremendous dharmic accelerant in its own right, and that of one's true sovereign royal virtues, to dissipate the fog that be confusing one's highest path manifest. Then once again, Larimar, to be another contingency to bring a calming energy to this celestial tempest output. And so that brings nice soothing capacity at the very end of the blade to bring calm and peace. Then Sugilite. Sugilite is a very special variety that's quite rare these days of violet ray frequency emanation. That is a lovely 6th, 7th, all non-physical chakra stimulant, as well as being a tremendous bubble of light generator that works for a very high transmutation through extreme divine resonance simultaneously through the auric field. So it's a nice bubble of light generator, as well as being a very powerful stone of dreams to put one in touch with their dreams of this incarnation they may have set aside because they thought it was not possible. But it definitely is a very powerful, higher conviction spiritual realm, like dharmic accelerant to keep one enthused and what was possible in life, essentially. Then at the very, very apex of this blade would be Tibetan black quartz. But this is a slightly clearer variety, which is intentional to have a nice clear focus of that Tibetan quartz. So Tibetan black quartz is from Tibet. Like I said, by the Himalayas, the most concentrated place on the earth to espouse with unbroken spiritual lineage discipline of literally resonating with source energy for thousands of years, which of course leaves a mark or a temporal impact or temporal imprint. So that aspect right there has a very powerful full light by stimulation. Hence I mentioned earlier how I employ this Seraphinite and Argonite as a triumphant trifecta, or trinity if you would, of master healer frequencies, because they carry the same kind of pathway stimulation of activating the entire light body and dramatically expanding the crown, as well as, most importantly actually for the tranquility's sake, grounds and expands the root grounding cord to a very high dynamic range of the Om frequency, which works as a very powerful Om resonant psychic shield too, in that regard, for practical endeavors. So that also works as a very powerful frequency purifier and also another ohm source resonant attunement, which is very, very nice. Okay, so I'll go ahead and discuss the focalizers next, which are found back with the Shiva Lingams all the way up to here, then the selenite, then the kyanites, then we are all scot-free. we're all home free from this long, laborious, intensively whimsical crystalline dissertation of extreme notoriety. It's a pretty wild thing, actually. I'm glad that I'm able to maintain myself as well within the face of trying to make sense of coherent linear concept of such a beast of a lightblade wand. Anyhow, that's me having a little silly rant. I couldn't keep it serious the entire time, you know. So, Shiva Lingam, found right here, are very fantastic full light body stimulators of earth, fire, water, and wind, the terrestrial elements, and storm for that matter, of very intensive Kundalini activation from India, of course, and is a very, very powerful homage to Shiva, the dancer and the destroyer, the lover, all those things. But Shiva Lingams are very powerful for compelling one's spiritual life into conscious self-reality and being a full pranic stimulant to, of course, encourage physical energy through the entire energy field in a very healthy dynamic range, as well as being also very well notarized as a stone of fertility, for that matter as well. So, there you have it. Shiva Lingam. Then right here is titanium aura quartz. Titanium aura quartz is actually clear quartz pressure bonded with titanium, which gives it a very dynamic full rainbow light body activation and also a very powerful strengthening insulation of the auric field, particularly subtle frequencies that can of course affect a highly psychic sensitive person, and have been a staple of light tech for many years for this purpose, to be a very strengthening focus of the energy. So you can think of these focalizers, of course, grounded into this primer wire, which is the main vein of this construct, all circulating together. Then grounding that to the primer wire takes this entire range of the blade band and gives it a focus of energy for broadcasting purposes. Kind of like this concept right here, where pointing my tree buddy right there to ground the energy like so, to give the focus of the recirculated figure 8 a directional contact patch of direction broadcast to focalize the energy, essentially. I think I said focus and focalize enough by there. Okay. So, continuing on with the titanium quartz notarized, going into lovely Lemurian clear quartz, which is a lovely spectrum of clear quartz, and is a very fantastic neutral accelerator of the energy of the impulses of magic through the wielder, going straight into lovely versions of aqua aura quartz that actually are Lemurian quartz that have been pressure bonded with straight gold. So when gold is pressure bonded to these lovely quartz spectrums, they come out a very vivid, beautiful blue. And why that's nice too, because obviously gold is a very celestial solar metal, but the aspect of having the blue emanation of the vibration output is that the extreme concentration of that gold makes the focus of the energy very soothing and very precise, particularly in fifth chakra orientation, because obviously having a very soothing, almost, I guess, to make an equivalent, it's almost like aquamarine on steroids, is how I feel about it when I resonate with the frequency, and giving it a focus. So it makes for another layer of this entire really aggressive output high frequency device to have a soothing broadcast at the very business end, or the rifling of the lightblade wand, if you would. I like my silly analogies, obviously. So aqua aura quartz is also great for really obviously stimulating the fourth and fifth chakras, much like the aquamarine spectrum, and as well as being a tremendous psychic sensitivity insulation, as well as maintaining one's highest truth and who they are in creation, essentially, too, in that capacity. So, that'd be the blade facing, that'd be focalizers. Now I'll go ahead and discuss the part I always save for last intentionally. So, the core of this entire blade is made from cedarwood from my front yard over here, my twins out front my house, and has a wonderful cedarwood frequency connotation, which has great amounts of magic involved, which I'm just going to go ahead and steamroll past that concept right now. I'll tell the recipient myself when the time comes. It's already been nearly an hour of me ranting incessantly in front of a camera with a lightblade wand. So anyway, that's just me being silly. So the cedarwood core goes from all the way down to here. Then the secondary core, which actually is another stick sanded out to exact specifications, has been screwed to the primary core. That indeed is wood that comes from Sedona, Arizona, which is from my best tree buddy out there, who is a juniper, who is actually in the middle of my favorite vortice between Bell Rock and Courthouse Mesa, is one lone juniper that doesn't get many visitors for some reason. That is quite spectacular. So that is the wood from Sedona, Arizona, and Mount Shasta simultaneously. Obviously, this takes place in Mount Shasta, my backyard. So, of course, the combination of the frequency bandwidths of carbon-based Shasta and Sedona together in one construct is quite the dynamic energy point to resonate with, essentially, when you combine those two power points. Now, for nearly always my favorite section of a dissertation, I'll be discussing the selenite that has been sanded to adhere to the cedarwood core. So, selenite is by itself quite the dynamic, powerful master healer by being a tremendous 6th, 7th, 8th, all-around physical chakra stimulus to the Godhead in a very precise, clean manner that can be considered a very powerful two-way communication point to the conscious self and the higher self, which is its own reward and pretty much the big goal of spiritual enlightenment, I would dare say, I guess, And so that by itself is a pretty fantastic statement of this resonance frequency. But the aspect of selenite too, it also makes for a very high purification through the entire chakra column by having such a high frequency connection induction to burn off stagnant energies that be impeding a natural healthy flowing body, which is very cool. And truly a master healer in its own right and vibrationally speaking. But where it really shines in any given spiritual. So after this whole hour of me ranting about these different particular frequencies, it takes this entire closed-loop reactive pitch. It can take this entire frequency range. It can purify all these crystals through the main vein, recirculating, purify all these crystals. Then it can amplify or intensify this entire crystalline output. And most importantly, in my opinion, it can also take and harmonize and bring equilibrium to the entire vibratory pitch. So you have the aspect of a pretty triumphant trinity of purification, amplification, and then harmonization, equilibrium to this entire frequency pitch mentioned for over an hour of incessant ranting. Pretty cool. So they are a staple in my life's work for that purpose. Selenite is quite critical because obviously, then circling back to the original commentary on selenite, also brings a very powerful connection point consciously to one's Godhead, which is, of course, a very powerful aspect to be awakened in one's alignment or dharma, to be of service to creation. That is a quintessential goal of white tech or spiritualism in general. So having that very strong induction right there to make that conscious kuwait is a very powerful enlightenment, awakening frequency, and not to mention, I think it's enough of digression. I'll go ahead and police myself and get back on target. We're nearly there. So this next section I do save for last because it gets very, very meta at the very end because it gets very challenging, it's a nice way to put it, to discuss it in a rational, linear fashion, the complexities of kyanite in these structures. So seen right here is black kyanite, orange kyanite, green kyanite, and blue kyanite. So the kyanite spectrum is based on the different color ranges actually have very interesting properties, and they work together as a great harmonious whole to resonate together for a maximum transferability. So before I go any further, more discuss the individual nodes of kyanite, kyanites are the most rapid transfer energies in the mineral kingdom just about, so hence the employment to actually have the intention broadcast, then make the transfer to the focus actually is the bread and butter as well of this platform, to take the energy and broadcast the focus like so, to ensure the contact patch frequency of this actually is making a tangible transferability, essentially. And so, starting off with black kyanite, black kyanite is a very fantastic grounder of all energy through the root chakra very quickly through the earth stars, which also can serve like a surge protector to ensure the contact patch is very dynamic. So like I mentioned, kyanites of the spectrums all basically bridge very quickly. So nothing quite grounds quite as quick and stable, consistent, as fast, even hematite and slug quartz as black kyanite, to make that contact patch very rapid through the body to ensure that energy is getting to Mother Earth as quickly as required for optimum peak performance. Then, orange kyanite is the ultimate sacrum stimulant of very high frequency fire energy, which can be very powerful for illuminating one's creativity to the highest configuration, particularly in combination with one's spiritual dharma. Then right here is green kyanite. Green kyanite is a very rapid transfer of green ray heart energy from intake output simultaneously with that of creation Mother Earth simultaneously. It's very meta, I'm trying to keep it consolidated. Then blue kyanite is a very powerful third eye, sixth chakra stimulant between the left and right hemispheres to, of course, cut through the fog of confusion from one's path and who they really are, and to be able to also make very powerful psychic gift realizations, so to speak, to expedite the process of the cities. So, when you take the four together, it also works as another layer of etheric Teflon for the entire auric field, making such rapid buffer intake output redirections that stagnant energy has a very difficult time sticking that even further by constantly grounding the Earth and Mother Earth and Father Sky simultaneously. I told you, it's right mad. I tried to warn myself and anyone putting up with this video at this point as a joke. But the idea too, of course, the kyanites make very dynamic autoreactive bridgings of energy that are going to be, of course, in tandem pitch with the recipient's highest good by design, based on all these different contingencies to make the energy run very quickly through the entire construct. So I believe it was sufficient to describe it somewhat coherently. I know, of course, it gets very meta. I take full responsibility. This is me speaking my Christianese. And so, yes, I'll do a summary now. So the big idea of this extremely high complex device is that it's a very, very potent, super intensive, empowering construct, obviously, to empower the wielder as she's in service to creation to the utmost, where she's out there giving them heaven, to utilize this broadcast as a focus of energy to, of course, bring great strength to her endeavors in service to creation, quite simply, actually, and is a very, very powerful broadcast frequency of a celestial tempest, a storm of divine energy, so to speak. Is a big preface right there. And I think I have spoken enough on the subject for one day. And anyone watching this, I wish you 1,000 blessings, and may the force be with us all.